or the other.
And they continue to enrich. I think the point is they kept going.
But Scott, how is that possible?
Time doesn't stop. People have ambitions.
By the president that their nuclear capabilities were obliterated. That's the word that he used.
No,
well,
I mean, I think
the Iranians said they have all this.
So you hear Scott Jennings on CNN there talking about the braggadocious nature when Steve Witkoff was in these negotiations with the Iranians, where they said they had the capacity for 11 nuclear bombs. When you're negotiating with Iran, and the point is to how can we get through this? How can we move past this? When a part of the Iranian negotiations is, just so you know, we've got the capacity for 11 nuclear bombs. That makes me wonder if they're really working towards the same goal as the United States was, which was a non-nuclear Iran. Obviously, it wasn't, and now obviously they aren't. Let's get to our next expert guest. Incredibly excited to have Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg back on the show with us, the co-chair of American Security at America First Policy Institute. General, thank you for the time today. It's a pleasure to have you back with us.
Good to be with you, Annie. Thanks. Good to be here.
Of course. Can I just give you the floor to talk about what goes into a decision that an administration makes to make such an aggressive attack on Iran, and to make sure that at the end you've left no doubt that they will not have the capacity to do what he said they didn't want them to do, which is to have a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, well, when you make the decisions with the president, it's not just you go in there and then an hour later you walk out with a decision. You generally go in there and you've got advisors in the room. They talk it over multiple times. They give the president options, the low case, the high case, and the case in between. And then they say, it's up to you, Mr. President, where you want to go. And he'll make the decision what he wants to get done. Pretty well, he uses what we used to call commander's intent, that this is what he wants to do. And then he goes out and lets the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of War come up with options for him. And then when they come back with options, he'll make the decision on the options he wants to do. And it's his call. He's the president. He's commander-in-chief. And they will follow his guidance. He's always done that. He's had a really Socratic way of doing business, meaning if you're in the room talking to him, he'll ask you your opinion, and you better be ready to deliver and give you your opinion on it. So it's just not, one and done in one meeting and kind of pull it out of your fanny. It's well thought through, and with this one, he didn't think of himself. He didn't think of next year. He was thinking of generations to come, where that the Iranians were in the process of building not just nuclear devices, which they probably were. What I mean by that is when you enrich uranium, if you enrich from 3 to 5%, then you're probably building for a power plant or something like that. They were enriching past 60%. The only reason you want to enrich past that number is to get to a nuclear type of weapon. The second part of that is when you look at the missile fleet they have, they were developing really pretty heavy-duty missile systems. The latest one they have could reach all the way to France. Mm-hmm. Why do you need to be able to build weapons for that? So, and then, of course, you look at a regime, which is a theocratic regime that's chance death to America and death to Israel. You've got a destabilizing force in the Middle East. Now, when you talk about nuclear weapons, when you work with a nuclear power, you treat them differently than you treat a non-nuclear power. And the reason for that is you just want to make sure that you don't say something or do something dumb that gets you in a position on the escalation ladder that is regrettable in the near term or the far term. So bottom line is he brought his team in, he brought the experts in, he brought the advisors in, they made the recommendations, he makes the final decision. He is the president.
Yeah, certainly. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg with us right now, the co-chair of American Security at America First Policy Institute. In your experience, and you've been around the block a few times, when it comes to President Trump's willingness to negotiate with Iran, first term, second term, his willingness to sit down and try to work out a deal, we've seen him do it with other countries and get deals with countries that I didn't, think that we would be talking about positive futures with. Did this president, Donald J. Trump, work hard to create a space where a negotiated deal could take place with Iran if they wanted to participate? Did we lose him?
He's still there, but I don't lost
I'm going to put him on hold here, and maybe Ethan can get to him and just give me a signal if he is able to come back and join us, because we don't want to lose him. Just sounded like he went mute there for a second. We were speaking with Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the co-chair of American Security at America First Policy Institute, the former assistant to the president and special presidential envoy for Ukraine. You can find him on X at General Kellogg. There are just a lot of different parts that come into a decision like this. And I think that one thing that hasn't really been talked about as much is President Trump's willingness. He talks about how he hates death. He hates to see these warring countries just killing people by the tens of thousands. The Iranian regime killing their own people to the tune of plus 30,000 of their own people who wanted to stand up to the government. In the United States, look, everywhere you go, every issue that exists, we have protests all over the country that are saying, something about, I don't know, you sum it up the way the Democrats do, F Trump. Simply F Trump. Those are evergreen signs for the left, F Trump, over and over and over again. That happens in the United States of America because of the First Amendment. But when you stand up and you disagree with your government in Iran, they kill you. You don't survive that. Like I said, to the tunes of tens of thousands of Iranian people who dared challenge their government. They didn't live to tell the story about it. As Iran is pushing its way into a nuclear capacity, you have to wonder if what they'd be willing to do to their own people, what would they be willing to do to the people who they hate around the globe? I think we have the general back here. I'm sorry about that. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg back with us right now.
It's bottom line. Let me ask you two questions at once. When you go into a negotiation like with Iran, you have certain things, a floor. You basically say, these are my red lines. I'm not going to do it. You can't have a nuclear weapon, period. So they were enriching uranium at a certain level. You can't do it. You have to turn over your enriched uranium. You don't do it, it's game over. Secondly, this was a theocratic government, meaning they don't care about their people. They were saying death to America, death to Israel, and they were coming from a European, a religious men, and they weren't thinking about their conflict with other nations. They didn't care. So in that regard, they had a disregard for life, and they've proven that.
Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg with us right now. General, when the president is working to negotiate, he's sending Kushner and Witkoff there to have those discussions. They call back and they say that they have the materials for 11 nuclear bombs. I felt like in the public, the president was saying that there was action coming. Is there some sort of like cat and mouse thing that Iran would play, or are they just disingenuous and they're negotiating just all the time?
Well, they were crappy negotiators, bottom line, Annie. And when they should have realized they were over the red line that President Trump wanted, and they knew they were building nuclear weapons. And the reason for that is we knew back in Trump 1, you treat nuclear nations differently than you treat non-nuclear weapon countries. Number two, that was totally destabilizing in the Middle East. If they got a nuclear weapon, what about the Saudis would have gotten one? What about the Emiratis or somebody else? And he didn't want to have an arms race. So he wasn't looking out for himself. He was looking out for future generations. Yeah. He was looking out for my grandchildren, or my sons and daughters, and people's sons and daughters. The other thing is he's looking out for the Iranian people as well. When the mullahs took over years ago, it became a very structured society religiously. For example, with women, you couldn't get out in public without a hijab on. Could you imagine if I told you, it was directed that you personally, Annie, couldn't go outside with that unless you were dressed a certain way? Well, that was real discrimination, and he's pretty open about that and very honest about that. And they just reached a point where they were disingenuous, their negotiations. I don't think that they thought, which they were wrong, that this President Trump, had the guts to pull the trigger, because we haven't had a president do that all the way back to Truman. So they made a bad call. They made a mistake. I knew it would have happened. We were pretty sure when they were loading up like they were doing, you don't load up that much combat power and not use it. So they were just bad negotiators.
Big mistake, huge. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg with us right now. I've heard a lot of just getting up and listening to the press conferences by the Secretary of War and General Kane there, Chairman Kane. and listening to the preparation and the execution of the plan that was put in place. And I'm hearing phrases like this hasn't been done since World War II, and the scope and the breadth of what the American military has been able to accomplish, alongside, of course, our partners, our allies with Israel. I'm wondering, in your mind, General, what the mission epic fury that we're watching right now, how does this reverberate around the world about the American superiority, our military presence, and our strength as a country, and our willingness to lead?
Well, I think when it comes to equipment, for example, give you a good example is when you look at the Lucas, which is the unmanned drone, what they call a kamikaze drone, or the F-22, or the F-35, or the B-1, or the B-2, or the Patriot system. We have the best equipment in the world. Happens to be operated by the best men and women in uniform in the world. And there's no number two. You got to go to number 3, number 4, number 5. They were protected, the Iranians, were protected by the best that the Russians had to, and the Chinese as well, gave them and had them use. It failed. I mean, how many airplanes have we lost? None. You know, how many, and unfortunately the soldiers were killed, but our losses have been minimum. We have no restrictions. We're doing truly unrestricted warfare in the skies. So how does that get there? And how does that happen? It happens because we have great soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, and exceptional equipment. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And so there's no class others than ours in the world, and we're showing that now on a daily basis. We should feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, certainly is. There is some shock and awe involved in it. General, when we get to this point where this administration has made the determination to strike with such resolve in a totality mentality, if I think back to the Biden administration and the Obama administration, such a wildly different approach to foreign policy, specifically with Iran. Did those administrations, in their very soft touch policy towards this country, give Iran the expedience to be able to get further down the road towards their nuclear weapons?
Boy, absolutely. I mean, here you have a president who's got the guts. Call it a different phrase if you want to. Got the guts to act, and none of the other presidents did, because that equipment was always there. So you always had a first-rate military. You always had the equipment that was there. You had somebody in the leadership position as commander-in-chief, the president, that was afraid to pull the trigger. This president isn't, and he's proven that. So by not doing that, they said, the opponents, realized that they could go up the escalation ladder and do something and kind of tweak our noses. This president won't let them do it. I don't care who you are. You're going to have to live with your decisions that you make if you're on the opposite side, if you're an opponent, an adversary, and it allows him a lot more latitude to build up and do stuff. You know, President Trump, including his first term, was very clear about not letting Iran get a nuclear weapon. What happened under Joe Biden, whether you like it or not, they were allowed to enrich uranium to 60, 70%. They were heading towards weapons grade, and as Steve Witkoff said, they had enough uranium, enriched uranium, to build multiple nuclear weapons. That didn't happen under Trump 1. Sure didn't happen under Trump 2. It had to happen under Biden. That kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it certainly does. Before we let you go, we're speaking with Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the co-chair of American Security at America First Policy Institute. They have said they've put kind of a 4-week time frame on this engagement. They have said that they're ahead of schedule. A lot of people keep using that phrase, forever war. How is this time different, and do you think 4 weeks is a fair assessment of a timeline?
Well, I don't think we're ever going to get involved in a forever war. I think we're boots on the ground. I think the length of this, when they say 4 weeks, is kind of an outside, because I think they're ahead of schedule. You know, they're going to reach a point on targeting that they've serviced to attack most of the targets or all the targets that they wanted to. They're getting no resistance at all. So now it's going to be up to getting rid of that theocratic regime, which was the mullahs. You know, it's sort of like, instead of whack-a-mole, it's whack-a-mullah. You know, it's one of those, every time somebody shows up, raises their hand, he's going to be in charge, he's dead within 24 hours. So I don't even know who's in charge right now at this minute. You know, I know that Khamenei's son was brought to be made in charge. Well, he just knocked on the target list. And I think it's in that period of time, multiple weeks, the amount of targeting that they're doing right now and the opposition they're getting against them right now, I think will be minimus, and it'll reach a point where once somebody else gets in charge, they're going to take control. I think the goal is to get a different government in there. And right now, let's use an example of, when you look at the Iranian Navy, it's at the bottom of the sea. There aren't any naval forces at all from Iran in the Persian Gulf. And we've been taken out by submarine, an Iranian ship that was in the Indian Ocean. So right now, I'm not too worried about targeting, and I'm sure they've got a target list. They're going down the target list, crossing one on after another, and it's just a matter of time to get it done.
Well, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, we're so grateful for your time back here with us on the Annie Frey Show and your insight. It's invaluable. We're grateful for that after the conversation today.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Bye-bye. General Kellogg there speaking with us about what goes into something like this. It's just the magnitude of it is just bigger than my pea brain mind can consume. And I think about the study that has to go into deciding. First, you have to determine intention. First, you have to determine, if you're President Trump, and boy, he negotiates with anybody and everybody. There's nobody who he's not willing to talk to, which I think is